This photo is believed to capture the largest group of sheep in history. But even this pales in comparison to record-breaking animal swarms. Are you ready to see them? Imagine waking up to find the streets, forests, and beaches covered in a moving, clattering sea of red. That's exactly what happens every year on Christmas Island, a remote territory in the Indian Ocean. This isn't a horror movie, it's one of nature's most spectacular migrations, as millions of red crabs leave their forest homes and march toward the ocean. The timing of this event is carefully synchronized with the moon. Once the rainy season arrives, signaling the start of the wet season, the crabs begin their journey toward the coast. They move in such overwhelming numbers that roads become impassable, and entire landscapes turn crimson. The local government even shuts down certain roads to give them safe passage, and special crab bridges have been built to help them cross highways without being crushed. What makes this even more fascinating is that these crabs spend most of their lives hidden deep within the forests of Christmas Island. But when the migration starts, they emerge all at once, creating a mass exodus unlike anything else in the animal kingdom. The goal? To reach the ocean, where females will release their eggs into the waves. Once the eggs hatch, tiny larvae drift out to sea, growing into juveniles before eventually making the long trek back to land. And they don't let anything stand in their way. These crabs climb over rocks, through underbrush, and even up walls in a determined push toward the coast. They may not be fast, but their sheer numbers and persistence make this one of the most jaw-dropping migrations on Earth. But here's where it gets really crazy. When the eggs finally hatch, billions of baby crabs flood the island, carpeting the beaches, forests, and even people's backyards. It's a living wave of tiny, scuttling creatures, making their way back to the forest where they'll stay until the next migration. If the red tide of Christmas Island's crabs wasn't wild enough, let's head to the skies. Because every year, billions of monarch butterflies take off on an epic journey that spans an entire continent. Unlike most animal migrations, this one isn't completed by a single butterfly. It takes 4 generations to finish the trip, making it one of the most incredible relay races in nature. Monarch butterflies are born with an internal compass and a map they've never seen. Every fall, millions of them leave Canada and the northern United States, heading south toward Mexico's fir forests. This journey can stretch over 3,000 miles, an impossible distance for such delicate creatures. But these butterflies aren't in a hurry. They ride air currents, glide over mountain ranges, and stop to refuel on nectar along the way. Then comes the moment that truly defies logic. When they finally arrive in Mexico, they don't just land in random places. They gather in the exact same trees their great-grandparents did. No one knows exactly how they do it, but the result is breathtaking. Entire trees draped in butterflies, their wings pulsing in unison like a living organism. When they take off, it's like an orange snowstorm filling the sky with color, but no sooner do they arrive than the next generation starts heading north again. By spring, their descendants begin the return journey, laying eggs along the way. It takes 4 cycles of life and death before a new wave of monarchs reaches their northern breeding grounds, and then, the process starts all over again. In the vast plains of East Africa, wildebeests don't just migrate, they dominate the landscape. Every year, over 1.5 million of them move in a never-ending loop across Kenya and Tanzania, searching for fresh grass and water. And they're not alone. Hundreds of thousands of zebras, gazelles, and other grazers travel with them, forming the largest land migration on Earth. This isn't a leisurely stroll. The wildebeest migration is a constant battle for survival, driven by the changing seasons. When the dry months hit, the herds head north, crossing the open savannas of the Serengeti. But their greatest challenge awaits, the Mara River, a churning, crocodile-filled obstacle standing between them and greener pastures. When the first wildebeest leaps in, chaos erupts. Thousands follow, kicking up water, getting tangled, or falling victim to waiting crocodiles. It's one of the most dramatic moments in the natural world, a true test of instinct and endurance. But those who make it through don't get to relax for long. After a few months in Kenya, the reins shift again, pulling them right back the way they came. Not all great migrations happen on land. Some take place in the vast, unpredictable ocean, where movement is dictated by currents, predators, and survival. Every year, billions of sardines form a massive moving shoal along the eastern coast of South Africa, stretching for miles. This phenomenon, known as the sardine run, is one of the largest movements of biomass on the planet. Sardines are small, but in numbers this large, they become a force of nature. As they move north, their tightly packed shoals create a rolling, shimmering wall of silver, sometimes spanning up to 9 miles long and 100 feet deep. But this isn't a peaceful journey. The sheer density of fish attracts an all-out feeding frenzy. Sharks, dolphins, seabirds, and even Bride's whales join in, each using different hunting techniques. Dolphins herd the sardines into tight bait balls, forcing them to the surface where diving birds pick them off. Meanwhile, sharks rush in from below, turning the water into a chaotic battle zone. This incredible event lasts only a few weeks before the shoal disperses, vanishing as suddenly as it appeared. But below the waves, another animal gathers in numbers that are just as astonishing, one that takes to the skies in a nightly exodus unlike anything else in the world. When the sun sets over Texas, the sky comes alive with movement. Just outside San Antonio, Bracken Cave is home to the largest bat colony on Earth, where more than 20 million Mexican free-tailed bats emerge in an endless spiral. This isn't just a swarm, it's a river of wings, stretching for miles as they take off into the night. These bats play a crucial role in controlling insect populations, each one consuming its weight in moths, beetles, and mosquitoes every night. Their synchronized emergence is mesmerizing. At first, just a trickle of movement, then a steady, twisting column as they ascend into the sky. Predators like hawks and owls wait nearby, hoping to pick off a straggler, but most bats escape into the darkness, guided by their incredible echolocation. By dawn, the swarm returns, disappearing back into the cave in a rapid, coordinated descent. This cycle has repeated for thousands of years, uninterrupted. But bats aren't the only creatures that gather in massive numbers under cover of darkness. Deep in the ocean, billions of tiny crustaceans rise from the depths, forming a hidden migration that fuels entire marine ecosystems. Beneath the frigid waters of the Arctic, one of the largest animal gatherings on Earth takes place, unseen by most. Billions of krill, tiny shrimp-like creatures, form swirling, ever-shifting clouds that stretch for miles. These dense shoals aren't just big, they are the foundation of an entire ecosystem, feeding everything from fish and seabirds to seals and the largest whales on Earth. Krill are driven by survival. By day, they sink deep into the ocean to avoid predators, but when night falls they rise toward the surface in a synchronized vertical migration. The sheer number of krill in these swarms is staggering. Scientists estimate that their total biomass outweighs all humans on the planet combined. In places where they gather in extreme densities, the water can turn red or orange, resembling an underwater sandstorm. Despite their size, most are no longer than 2 inches, krill are a critical link in the Arctic food web. Without them, many of the ocean's giants wouldn't survive. But while krill swarms remain mostly hidden beneath the waves, other migrations dominate the sky, painting it white with millions of beating wings. Twice a year, millions of snow geese take to the skies in a spectacle so massive it can be seen from space. These birds migrate between their Arctic breeding grounds and the warmer fields of the United States, forming blinding white clouds that stretch for miles. Unlike solitary migrators, snow geese travel in enormous flocks, moving together like a single organism. When they take off, it's not in scattered groups, but all at once their honking calls echoing across wetlands and open fields. A single resting site may hold hundreds of thousands of geese, packed so densely that they appear like a layer of fresh snow covering the landscape. What makes this migration so remarkable is its perfect coordination. The geese never migrate alone, following the lead of older, more experienced birds. Even their famous V-shaped formations serve a purpose, reducing air resistance and conserving energy over their 3,000-mile journey. And while their movement is steady and deliberate, another aerial phenomenon is far more unpredictable, one that turns the sky into a twisting, swirling work of art. At first it's just a few birds, then a few more. And suddenly the entire sky is moving as thousands, sometimes millions of starlings twist and shift in perfect synchronization. This phenomenon, known as a murmuration, is one of the most mesmerizing sights in nature, as birds move together in a pulsing, fluid wave that seems to have a mind of its own. No one leads these murmurations. Instead, each starling reacts to its 7 closest neighbors, responding in milliseconds to changes in speed and direction. The result is a constantly shifting shape, morphing from spirals to ribbons to massive undulating clouds. Scientists believe murmurations serve multiple purposes, confusing predators, communicating within the flock, and conserving heat during cold months. These swirling formations appear across Europe, especially in Italy, the UK, and the Netherlands, often just before sunset. When the birds finally land, it happens all at once, as if an invisible signal has been given. But if starlings paint the sky with movement, another insect phenomenon turns entire landscapes into something straight out of a sci-fi movie. For most of their lives, mayflies remain hidden underwater. But when the time comes, billions of them emerge in a single night, transforming rivers, bridges, and entire towns into living blizzards of flying insects. These hatches are synchronized, triggered by water temperature and light conditions. Once the mayflies surface, they have only a few hours to live, just enough time to mate, lay eggs, and start the cycle all over again. The sheer density of these swarms is staggering. In some cases, so many mayflies take flight at once that they show up on weather radar resembling massive storm clouds. Roads become slick with fallen insects, and streetlights glow with swarming mayflies, creating an eerie, pulsating effect. Birds and fish feast on the short-lived explosion of life, taking advantage of the feast before it disappears just as quickly as it arrived. But this isn't the only animal event where timing is everything. Next, we'll look at another swarming species whose synchronized movements light up the night in ways that seem almost otherworldly. Some swarms are chaotic, but others move with astonishing precision. In the mangrove forests of Thailand and Malaysia, millions of fireflies blink in perfect unison, turning the night into a glowing, rhythmic spectacle. Unlike ordinary fireflies which flash randomly, these synchronized species coordinate their light pulses so that entire trees appear to breathe with golden light. This isn't just for show, it's a highly evolved mating strategy. By flashing in harmony, male fireflies increase their chances of attracting a mate, standing out in a sea of synchronized competitors. Scientists believe these insects use a combination of visual cues and biological rhythms to achieve this coordination, adjusting their flashes almost instantly if the pattern shifts. The best places to witness this incredible event are along rivers and wetlands, where fireflies gather in vast numbers. Boats drift silently through glowing forests, creating an almost dreamlike atmosphere. But while these insects rely on light to attract attention, other swarming creatures use sheer numbers to overwhelm entire landscapes, whether it's farmland, cities, or even an entire continent. Most swarms come and go, but some never stop growing. In 1859, a handful of European rabbits were introduced to Australia, and within a few decades they had multiplied into the largest uncontrolled mammal invasion in history. With no natural predators and a landscape perfect for burrowing, their numbers exploded into the billions, consuming crops, eroding soil, and devastating native plant life. Unlike seasonal migrations, this invasion has never truly ended. Rabbits breed incredibly fast, with a single female producing dozens of offspring per year. By the early 20th century, the infestation was so severe that Australia built the world's longest fence, a 2,000-mile barrier meant to keep rabbits out of farmland. It didn't work. The rabbits simply dug under or found ways around. The government tried everything: hunting, poisoning, and even introducing diseases like myxomatosis to control their numbers. These efforts slowed the invasion but never stopped it. Even today, millions of rabbits still roam the Australian countryside, a permanent reminder of how one small introduction can turn into an unstoppable swarm. But while rabbits took years to spread, some swarms explode overnight, covering entire regions in a living, crawling mass. Few animal swarms in history have matched the sheer scale and devastation of the Rocky Mountain locust plague of 1875. This wasn't just a large swarm, it was the largest recorded insect outbreak ever, covering an area of 198,000 square miles, nearly twice the size of Colorado. Scientists estimate there were trillions of locusts, darkening the sky for hours as they passed overhead. For farmers, it was like a nightmare unfolding in real time. The locusts moved in unstoppable waves, devouring everything green in their path. Crops, grass, and even wooden fence posts were stripped bare, leaving behind fields of destruction. Survivors described the sound of the swarm as a roaring wind, and the insects were so dense that trains had trouble moving through the layers of crushed bodies on the tracks. But what made this swarm even more mysterious was its sudden disappearance. By the early 1900s, the Rocky Mountain locust had completely vanished, making it one of the only insect species to go extinct due to human activity. Though smaller locust swarms still occur worldwide, none have ever reached the scale of the 1875 plague. However, not all mass gatherings bring destruction. Some are essential to the survival of an entire ecosystem. Every spring, millions of ancient creatures emerge from the ocean to turn the beaches of Delaware Bay into a living, crawling mass. These aren't insects or fish, they're horseshoe crabs, some of the oldest animals on Earth, unchanged for over 450 million years. Their mass spawning event is one of the most critical ecological swarms, triggering a feeding frenzy that supports an entire network of species. Guided by the full moon, horseshoe crabs gather in massive numbers, with females laying up to 90,000 eggs each in the wet sand. The sheer density of eggs attracts countless shorebirds, including the endangered red knot, which times its migration to coincide perfectly with the spawning event. Without this feast, many bird species wouldn't survive their long journeys. But this ancient ritual is now under threat. Horseshoe crabs are harvested for their unique blue blood, used in medical testing, and habitat destruction has reduced their numbers. Despite this, every year, the survivors return in massive numbers, continuing a biological event that has taken place since before the dinosaurs. It's a rare example of an animal swarm that has remained unchanged for millions of years, proving that in nature, some patterns are too important to break. A swarm of insects is terrifying enough, but what happens when millions of rodents overrun farms, homes, and entire towns? In 2021, Australia faced one of the worst mouse plagues in its history, as unstoppable waves of mice surged across the countryside. These weren't just a nuisance, they were a living flood of destruction, devouring crops, chewing through buildings, and even biting people in their sleep. The outbreak began after an unusually good harvest season, which provided an endless supply of food. With nothing to keep their numbers in check, the mice multiplied at an explosive rate, turning fields and grain silos into breeding grounds. As their numbers surged into the millions, then billions, they formed writhing, seething masses that covered the ground like a moving carpet. Entire crops were wiped out overnight, storage containers were eaten through, and farms lost millions of dollars in damages. Videos surfaced of mice pouring out of machinery, swimming through silos and climbing the walls of houses. The infestation was so bad that desperate farmers resorted to burning fields and flooding burrows to stop them. But as history has shown, once a swarm reaches this scale, stopping it isn't easy. And in the insect world, one species takes swarming to an entirely different level, forming colonies that stretch across continents. Most ant colonies are tiny, self-contained worlds, but Argentine ants don't follow the usual rules. Instead of small nests, they form supercolonies, stretching for thousands of miles and containing billions of workers. Scientists believe the largest colony ever discovered spans 3 continents, with genetically identical ants found in Europe, South America, and Japan. What makes these ants so unique is that they don't fight each other. In most species, separate colonies wage constant wars for territory, but Argentine ants recognize their own kind even across vast distances, allowing them to cooperate on an unimaginable scale. When food is found, the colony moves as a single unified force, overwhelming other insects and wiping out local species. This strategy has made them one of the most invasive species on Earth. They've displaced native ants, destroyed local ecosystems, and even caused declines in bird and reptile populations by disrupting food chains. But for all their coordination, even these ants can't match the scale of another insect swarm. One that rises from the ground in billions, covering entire landscapes in a moving, flying mass. For most of their lives, termites remain hidden inside wood, underground, or within towering mounds. But once a year, something extraordinary happens. Billions of winged termites, known as allotids, take to the skies in a synchronized, explosive emergence. Within minutes, entire landscapes transform into a swirling, flying storm of insects, their delicate wings reflecting the sunlight like shimmering dust. This phenomenon happens when young termites leave their home colonies to start new ones. Unlike worker termites, alates are designed for flight, their only mission being to find a mate and establish a new colony. Their emergence is so massive that weather radar sometimes picks them up, mistaking them for rain clouds. But while their flight is short-lived, many are eaten by birds, bats, and other predators. The survivors will go on to form some of the largest and most complex insect societies on the planet. Their massive underground networks can house millions of individuals, shaping entire ecosystems. And while termites build below ground, another swarm rises from the ocean, drifting silently, yet capable of bringing chaos wherever it appears. Most ocean creatures move with purpose, migrating, hunting, or escaping predators. But jellyfish are different. They drift with the currents, silent, alien, and unpredictable. In Japan, one species, the Nomura's jellyfish, appears in swarms so large they can shut down entire fishing industries. These giants can grow over 6 feet wide and weigh more than 450 pounds, making them one of the largest jellyfish species in the world. Every few years, for reasons not fully understood, millions of them appear suddenly along the Japanese coast, overwhelming fishing boats and clogging nets with their massive gelatinous bodies. Their venom isn't lethal, but in such high numbers they become a serious problem, destroying fish stocks and damaging equipment. Scientists believe these jellyfish might be thriving due to climate change and overfishing, which have reduced their natural predators. With fewer threats, their populations explode into unpredictable, pulsing swarms, covering the ocean like a floating army. And unlike other swarms that travel on instinct, these vast drifting masses have no direction, just an unstoppable presence moving wherever the sea takes them. Every year, thousands of honeybee colonies break apart, with tens of thousands of bees leaving their hive to search for a new home. Unlike the chaotic invasions of locusts or mice, these swarms move with purpose and precision, creating one of the most organized mass movements in nature. It all starts when a hive becomes too crowded. To prevent overpopulation, the queen bee and half the colony take off, leaving behind the next generation. They don't go far at first, usually clustering on a tree branch, fence post, or even a parked car while scout bees search for a permanent location. This waiting swarm can contain up to 30,000 bees, forming a buzzing living mass that hangs together like a single organism. Despite their intimidating appearance, swarming bees aren't aggressive. They have no home to defend. Their sole mission is to find a new nesting site, and once the scouts return with options, the colony makes a decision through a complex voting process. Once a consensus is reached, the entire swarm takes flight, moving as one to their new home, where they will build fresh honeycombs and restart the cycle. Bee swarms are a reminder that not all massive animal gatherings are destructive. Some are a sign of renewal, a natural process that ensures the survival of the hive. That's about it. Write in the comments which animal swarm shocked you the most. For more useful information, watch other videos.